I apologize inconvenience if anyone reads this at all. This is really long. I, F19, was love-bombed, groomed, emotionally and mentally abused, manipulated, stupid. Clinically, in the relationship I was with him, M21, I was going insane. I was hidden of our relationship the whole time by his friends and other women he would talk to, so he was single in person while I wasn't on my end. I met him when I was 17 and he was 19. I lived across the country from him, I was young, still am, and he completely love-bombed me. I was already going through so much after finding out he cheated the first time, like mentally he turned a healed version of me into the worst. I reverted to my old ways of hating myself and doing everything for his validation because he was very well manipulative, and he always made me feel belittled. He was narcissistic, and he always craved power over literally everything. I felt so much pressure to perform and just be everything he wanted me to, and to always do what he wanted so that he wouldn't look at other women, cheat, or lie, or stop having feelings for me. I constantly felt pressured by him to send explicit pictures when I openly admitted to him that I felt like I was being used for my body at times. There was one time where I was extremely upset with him and openly expressed that this was the first time a man has ever made me feel like an object. I was okay with it sometimes because I loved him and I liked to feel attractive like a lot of other girls do. He took advantage of my insecurities, though, and he was my source of validation. He wanted me to send every day and would be upset sometimes if I didn't do it at the time he wanted or within a few hours, which I can revoke because I have the right to not send or say I don't want to anymore, but he made me feel like I'm a bad person if I said I didn't want to anymore. So now that I've had time to rethink all of this, I realize this was a form of coercion and in a way sexual abuse. I found out 6 months into dating that he was dating a sweet girl that he was with in person for 3 years, and I was the other woman. There is no amount of guilt I can express that I feel about that. At the time, I wasn't even aware. He would refer to her as his ex, but the whole time he was dating her. I feel deep regret for falling into his manipulation after he begged and acted like he actually felt guilty, and I actually ended up believing his lies, somehow. The thing about this guy was he would lie so much about little things, too. My friends hated this guy so much, they were surprised I was even able to forgive him. The highs with him were so high, I wouldn't even remember how much he'd hurt me, and the lows were extremely low. I was extremely emotionally and mentally vulnerable and also freshly 18. I know I am immature, and I've been open about that with him too. I somewhat forgave him through this, and he promised he would end the relationship and stop leading her on, which he did do. He was promising me he wouldn't do things behind my back anymore and never cheat again. I was always open about my mental health with him, which was a big mistake. He took that and used it to his advantage. I warned him multiple times, like, I am young, I am immature sometimes, I might even get upset with you out of nowhere if I think about or still process what you did. And he said that was fine, and he accepted everything, but then got upset with me when I actually did what I warned him about. He somehow went 6 more months with him, and I was dumb enough to go fly to see him in New York. We spent 5 days together in February of this year, during Valentine's week. I actually felt like this was authentic and could go somewhere in the future since I already was planning to go to school in NYC as a transfer. He made me feel like this was actually genuine. He made me feel so safe in person. It was like he was a whole other person, and I completely fell for his act. Through text and long distance, it wasn't even close to being euphoric and loving like it was in person. I felt so genuinely loved, and I felt like I could actually trust him in person with my life and even with my body, which was extremely dangerous. He showed me around the city, and we just spent the whole time stuck together, and we both couldn't keep our hands off of each other. Coming from the West Coast and never really traveling, I was fascinated by the chilly weather and the city environment. I fell completely in love with New York, and it assured me I would love to transfer to a university there.
I thought things would actually be good from this point. He showed me so much affected in love. I was starved for love, especially because I was so loyal to him. Something about it felt so authentic, and maybe it was for just that week. There was a night I remember vividly where he cried in my arms, skin to skin, saying he didn't want me to go back and wanted more time with me. Mind you, this was 2 days before I had to fly back, and also, he was the first one to cry. I hadn't up to this point, but then it made me emotional, so I cried with him. He told me that he's never felt this way for any girl, and he's never cried over a girl. Made it worse by telling me that I truly was his first love. Through his tears convinced me that he was actually serious, and I was just worrying in the past for no reason, even though he literally cheated on me. This trip literally made me forget about every single bad thing he did to me. He met my mom, too. Her coming on the trip was a whole other story, but all I have to say is I went through hell just to spend that week with him. My mom now trusting of him, too, I thought I was safe now. I flew back crying and sobbing the whole time. It felt like my life was now incomplete without him. It felt too good to be true, and it was. I was completely wrong. Weeks later, it felt like once he got the clear that I wasn't pregnant, he started becoming distant at this time. Very slowly getting more and more distant, this triggered my abandonment wounds horribly and anxiety about him cheating. When it came to him, I always ignored my intuition and gave him the benefit of the doubt because I wanted to be mature so badly. The thing about me is that my intuition never lies, ever. He was indeed starting to cheat with someone new. He stopped calling me every night, and even in general at this point. He said he was going through stuff with his dad and that his dad was in jail at this time, and now he working for his mom in place of him, which, mind you, he was unemployed for a while by then since he quit his job and never ended up getting a new one. And suddenly he started getting busy. I didn't even know what to believe because all he ever did was lie. I had a gut feeling he was calling someone else in place of the times we did, and I was extremely confused because he always called me every night at least prior to this. He clearly thought I was dumb or stupid, besides him having a superiority complex. I was smarter than he thought because he was caught up cheating prior to this, all because of my own research. He was stupid and bad at hiding stuff. I didn't even need to check his socials or ask for passwords or his phone. So now at this point, it was a month after I saw him in person, and our relationship was just completely rocky, and we were barely talking. He was just blaming everything on his stress. He withdrew his affection and got upset with me for being upset that he was treating me this way, and I was having these trust issues. He was making so many excuses when we broke up as to why we shouldn't be together, and that I'm so immature, and I give him attitude every day. I'm so far away. Dating would be easier in person. I only want him at his best. Literally, when was he at his best? We ended up breaking up anyway. The same day we broke up, I was confirmed of my own suspicions. He indeed was cheating. He was calling someone else every night when he stopped calling me. He was giving someone else his time. He missed the feeling of having someone's body after I visited him, clearly. And now he was dating someone new who lived in New York. The same day we broke up, or probably while we were together. I don't know, and I'll never know the full story. This was the lowest point of my life, and I was left with nothing but embarrassment, shame, confusion. I was wounded, and I was extremely betrayed. I have never been brought to such a low place until I met him. His abuse has affected me extremely badly, to the point where I truly felt like life wasn't even worth living anymore. I felt so stupid and used that I would have done anything to stop feeling that pain. This breakup was just months ago in March, and I'm still healing. It took until this month to actually process and feel my pain instead of eating it and suppressing it. He texted me on my birthday 2 months ago saying happy birthday and he hopes I'm doing well, meanwhile being in his new relationship with the new girl he had been cheating with. I don't understand why, and I never will, but I'm glad I never responded or cared to. I don't know what he wanted or what his point was in that. He'd expressed in the relationship that he doesn't bother to text his exes because what's the point if he didn't feel anything for them? The day of the breakup, he told me basically that he fell out of love with me in a span of a few weeks after telling me all the stuff he did is crazy. I'm feeling much better as of right now, and I have been very consistent in therapy, and I had to resume taking my antidepressants, especially during this time. I'd become so depressed that I stopped taking my meds consistently and went days at a time without them for months. I would probably not be alive right now without them and therapy. This whole relationship gave me clinical PTSD, and my life will never be the same after this. I've suffered way too much from the pain I was put through. When I loved someone, I always gave it my fullest, and those people are aware that it's hard to find the kind of love I give. They take it for granted. As of now, I'm not looking forward to relationships or loving people anymore. It's sad that I even have to do this for my own sake, but it is much more peaceful this way, and I'm just protecting myself. I definitely know he still thinks of me after he messaged me on my birthday. Previously, I'd asked him when it was while we were still dating, and he got it wrong. Somehow he suddenly remembered it when we broke up and thought it was a good idea to message me. I truly hope he regrets his actions and feels even a bit of guilt and empathy towards what he has put me through. He lacks emotional and mental intelligence as well as empathy. As of now, I just want to heal from my trauma and exceed in life. I want to be consistently happy again without needing external sources of love or validation. I just hope nobody else goes through this again or feels this pain. I hope his new girlfriend will be okay as well, and I'm sorry if he treats her even closely to what he put me through. I'm sorry to my past self for being blinded by love.
My girlfriend's mother lied to her and me, and when I noticed it, I was seething with anger. Am I a bastard because after everything that happened, I can't stand her? Hello, everyone. I don't even know where to start. I'm 22 and my girlfriend is 23. We've been dating for 3 years, and I've known her parents for 3 years, and she's known mine. Her father is a good man, I would call him a kind person, and her mother is a pretty serious woman who seemed a little strange to me at first, but I didn't pay much attention to the details. It all started about a year ago. I want to start with a small specialist. I'm one of those people who gain trust quite a lot, and of course lost it easily. My girlfriend's mother, let's call her Audrey. So Audrey entered the circle of people I trust. She communicated with me when I had some situations related to my family. Note, I was raised by my mother since my father left us when I was 13, and let's say he was an aggressive person. Audrey seemed to me to be an understanding and kind woman. I could share anything with her. She always told me that I was part of their family, and my girlfriend also liked that I had a wonderful relationship with her parents. However, now I understand that it was a mistake, and I regret that I shared my personal efforts. I noticed the first oddities 3 years ago. When we just started dating, my girlfriend, her mother, came to visit us. We live in another country. I remember that the three of us were sitting and talking in the evening. At some point, Audrey blurted out that my girlfriend was conceived in a threesome, and she was not completely sure who she would have a child from. Can you imagine my shock? The surprised and embarrassed face of my girlfriend? I then thought about how strange it was to say such a thing to my child, and especially in raising me. Then she left, and a few months later, my girlfriend decided to tell me about how in childhood, her mother decided against it, that my girl would be better off studying in a fee-paying school than in a regular school, where she had friends. Then she was little and could not wear her mother's balcony. As a result, this ended with several years of harsh bullying from classmates and the absence of a normal life. My girlfriend hated this school to this day. She was harshly humiliated by her peers, since mainly children from very wealthy families studied there. At that time, as her parents lived with Audrey's mother, my girlfriend's grandmother, they huddled in a dirty apartment. I know that my girlfriend, Mary, did not have her own room. She slept on the couch at the entrance. Before her relationship with me, she had never been bought new clothes, but secondhand ones. She didn't even have underwear that wasn't bought secondhand. Mary had never been to the sea or on vacation. She barely had enough money to just drink coffee in a frying pan. So as a result of the story, I got a little angry, but they didn't tell her. To be honest, I still don't understand her mother's logic. If they didn't have any money anyway, then why force her daughter to go to a fee-paying school where she wouldn't be bullied? Pull her out of her circle of friends and ruin her school years until graduation. This story didn't leave my head for a long time. So the most interesting thing is that at the same time, her mother decided to get a dog. Understand, I have nothing against having animals, and I love them myself, but where else would she put a dog in a cramped apartment and with no money for underwear? And surprisingly, the dog got more than Mary. Audrey bought expensive food, beds, and toys to order, while Mary could not beg for a table to study for half a year. Shows before that, she studied without a table and did her homework on the kitchen table. Let's get back to the house. 2.5 years have passed since she came to visit us.
And then, half a year ago, something came to light that no one expected. Everything seemed to be going well. Mary was calling her parents as usual, and during one of those calls, she noticed that something was wrong between them. Later, it turned out that her mother had become interested in a man from her work, and she wanted to start an affair behind Mary's father's back. Let's call him John. So, according to Audrey, her husband had been a brat and a weakling for 23 years. Her mother had said different things about her father not giving her presents, about him never buying anything for Mary, and not financially participating in my girlfriend's life. According to Audrey, after so much time together, their relationship had become friendly. All these stories about her doing everything for Mary ultimately affected their relationship with her father. My girlfriend is very kind and caring, so despite all this, she still loved her father, although their communication was superficial. It got to me, and until the very end, I thought how it is possible to live nearby and do absolutely nothing for your daughter and wife, but only watch from the sidelines. In fairness, he at least bought groceries. So after what Audrey said about her colleague at work, Mary was not against it. She understood that each parent deserves their own happiness. After that, it all started. In short, her mother started an affair with a married man,
and while staying with John for 2 months, she continued to meet with that man behind his back. She also told Mary how bad she still felt with John. In the end, the man's wife found out about their affair, after which John found out too, and Mary's grandmother was shocked by her daughter's behavior. Let's call her lover Andy. And after John found out about her affair, the best thing that came to Audrey's mind was to quickly rent an apartment and move there with Andy. Before that, of course, she managed to talk to John. As far as I know, she told him about what she was missing, and after that, according to her, John took everything normally and was even happy. Was he happy? Sounds like nonsense. By the way, her lover is much younger than her, and seeing them together, one could assume that he was her son, because Audrey is almost 50 years old and Andy was about 30 years old. Mary was aware of everything, since apparently her mother wanted to speak out and she did not find a better candidate than Mary. In the end, she left John with her mother to live in her apartment. He was depressed, and at that moment, his grandmother supported him as best she could and did not kick him out, since she did not want to live alone. Mary felt sorry for her father, but she could not do anything. After her mother moved out, a difficult period began. Audrey called almost every day and told how good she was with Andy, how good he was in bed, and how wonderful everything was with them. In fact, he was disgusting. Later, you will understand why. A month passed after what happened, and the first visible red flags began to appear. Audrey called us on video together with Andy, and then he began to tell me and Mary how we should live and what to do. For reference, at that time I wanted to buy a car and I was a little short, so I put it off. Andy imposed on me the idea that I needed to take out a loan and so on, then asked what kind of car my mother had, a new Mini Cooper, after which he began to actively criticize her choice of car. For a second, he did not have his own property except for the rented apartment in which they lived and an old falling apart car which runs thanks to prayer. I am the kind of person who does not climb with advice when not asked, and I demand the same attitude towards myself. Then I kept silent out of politeness, but I understood that I didn't want to hear his moralizing anymore. Then after some time, Mary's grandmother called us and told us that when Audrey came with Andy, they didn't even say hello to anyone or ask how they were doing. They just packed their things or used her grandmother's place as their personal storage. By the way, Audrey left her dog with her grandmother, who has a sore leg and she physically can't go for a walk. After that, Audrey came a couple of times to walk the dog and then stopped. And then she completely stopped responding to any requests from her mother and stopped helping, saying, "I have a new life and I live it for myself." Then she completely disappeared. It's just that at some point, Mary realized that all this time she was the initiator of communication with her mother and decided to see what would happen if she stopped initiating communication. And what do you think happened next? Her mother apparently simply forgot that she had a daughter for almost 3 months. She called or wrote to her only when she needed to spill some information, for example, to complain about her grandmother or to talk about their wonderful sex life. Mary was unpleasant to listen to all this, and I don't understand why she would share such information with her daughter. After being completely ignored by her mother for 3 months, Mary became closer to her father. Their communication finally became better, and as a result, Mary decided to ask why her father treated them like that. Why didn't he help her when they lived together? And then the truth came out. It turned out that Audrey had been lying to everyone for 23 years.
It turned out that Audrey was lying about Mary's father, and all this time she was ruining his reputation with her lies, ruining their relationship with their daughter, and all for the sake of asserting herself at their expense. So the truth was that since Mary's childhood, her mother did not work and her father provided for the family as best he could. He had a small but not small salary. He did everything he could, went on business trips, and gave money to Audrey so that she in turn would buy food and everything else for Mary when she was still a baby. At first, they lived separately from their grandmother. Then Audrey spent the money allocated for life God knows where, because when John returned from business trips, the refrigerator was empty. From that moment, he began to give her less money, and he bought food himself. After, he found an easy job for Audrey since she could not find anything. As a result, she worked for several months and quit. According to John, at that time, Audrey's dream was a fur coat, and she was thinking about it while John was thinking about his family and how to earn more. He heard her say every time that she paid for Mary's children's sections, paid for school, paid for everything for her, but the truth was that at that moment, she was not working and could not have her own money. John's story was argued in contrast to what Audrey always said, and it turned out that he gave her money, and then she said that she did everything. John said that he did not care that she said that everything was paid for out of her pocket, although it was his money. He said that he thought that apparently it was better for her, and he cared about her feeling comfortable and not being nervous about the fact that she could not find a job. Now he understands that it greatly affected the relationship with his daughter. In fact, he was exposed as a slacker in front of everyone. This lasted 23 years. When I heard this, I felt like a deceived sucker. I can imagine what Mary was like at that moment. Let's continue from the moment when the parents moved in with Mary. John said that then he lost his job and received unemployment benefits. While he was looking for a new one, Audrey was the initiator of the move. He listened to her and did what she thought was right. After, he helped her find a job and through friends got her a job in the civil service, where she works to this day. After she started working, her ego level apparently grew to the limit. She began to spit on her grandmother and John. She always exposed them as slackers, of people who want too much from her. At the time when they lived with their grandmother, Audrey rarely cooked, she rarely cleaned, she just worked and then came home and watched TV series and then slept until 1 o'clock on weekends. In fact, Mary and I learned a lot of things. I will not list all the details since it is a long story. Let's get back to what we have now. After the absence of any news from Audrey, my girlfriend decided to try to fix the situation and called her mother to establish contact, but she kept silent about what she learned from John. By the way, the information was later confirmed by her grandmother. As I understand it, they had a good conversation, but later we realized that this did not change anything at all. Later, Mary needed one document that only her parents could make, nothing illegal, by the way. In general, she asked Audrey, but she in turn answered that it was unrealistic, etc. After which the same request to John was successful, and the documents are already with us. In general, after the conversation, Audrey appeared for a week, after which she disappeared as the first time. She told Mary that time was flying by for her, and she was constantly busy with something. Later, it turned out that this was not the case. Our grandmother called us and in the conversation mentioned that Audrey had at least 2 days off and that during this time, she did nothing and didn't even come to walk her dog. Then another month passed. The situation was getting worse and Mary decided to call a second time because she was sad that she was essentially abandoned and then sometimes used just to talk. Apparently, because of nerves, she often began to have headaches. At least that's what the doctor said. My girlfriend started having severe headaches from the moment of the first conversation with her mother. She could barely stand on her feet at such moments. We were told that she needed to be less nervous, and that's why she decided to call a second time. Unfortunately, everything did not go according to plan, and at some point, her mother started yelling at Mary after she asked why she left the dog with her grandmother because it was hard for her to cope with it. In the end, it all ended with me not being able to stand it and running to the phone told her to shut her mouth because Mary hadn't said anything like that and that she shouldn't make her health condition worse with her behavior. Mary was grateful that I stood up for her in front of her mother, and after that they were able to talk normally. But as usual, this did not solve anything because after that, Audrey stopped communicating again. After that, Mary decided that it was time to stop imposing communication. Apparently, she had become superfluous in her mother's life because the only thing she talked about was Andy. Then, after some time, we flew off on vacation to the sea. During the vacation, we got a little nervous because another secret was revealed. It turns out that Audrey left her mother with a large debt for electricity payments, etc. The money that John gave her to cover these payments, she put aside and eventually bought herself the very fur coat she dreamed of. I was furious. I was offended that she treated my grandmother and Mary like that. Obviously, she didn't care about anyone except herself. In the end, guess who paid off that debt? That's right, it was John. By the way, a funny fact, Audrey decided to leave him as a backup option just in case, since she had suspicions that Andy cheated on her with his ex-wife. And this story ends with the fact that just recently, Mary decided to tell her everything to her mother. She is very calm, unlike me, and has never even raised her tone towards her mother. But sooner or later, all good things come to an end. Mary decided to write her an SMS in which she politely explained that she was not pleased with the whole situation that had developed, etc., to which her mother replied, "What you're saying doesn't match reality," and turned everything around as if she was the victim in this situation, that she had finally started living for herself, and essentially ridiculed the fact that 23 years later, Mary had begun mending her relationship with her father and devalued everything that had been written to her. After that, Mary found support in her father, and he in her.
And when I mention this woman, I start to boil like a kettle. So tell me, am I a bastard? Because after everything that happened, I can't stand her. And how would you have acted in this situation in Mary's place?